Hey, we're back here. Hey y'all, how are we doing? Good. Awesome. I'm gonna unfold my little piece of paper with my notes. This is very difficult. Alrighty, so glad we're doing well. My name is Sakinna, as said. I'm part of Black Like Me. I'm a DJ. I run around with a camera every once in a while. I actually hosted a couple events in this space. It's really neat. I love this space. But yeah, today I'm going to be talking a bit about self-care in the way that I understand it and the aspects of it that I can speak to. So before that, just generally, Maya already did a line acknowledgement, but I'd like everyone to, if you can throughout the night, think of your specific relationship with the land and how you interact with it. Me as a person with parents who have immigrated here, parents who were born here and have come here through literal slavery, my relationship to this land will be different than every single one of you here, but I encourage folks to at least take the time to be like, hey, what do I actually think about this land that I live on? Have I ever actually contemplated where it comes from? Because I think that it's very important, and this land, as said before, is not ours. So the least we can do is think about it, and we shouldn't be doing much more than the least. And then I'm going to do a quick intro and a disclaimer. I personally believe that my ideas and my ideas specific to this conversation don't exist in a vacuum. They're a product of relationships that I have, conversations that I've had over time, thoughts that I've had in my head, and are all generally cumulative of all of those things. So when I'm speaking here and we're going to have this cool little discussion type thing, it's great that I'm up here, but I'm not the only one up here, and I just want people to be mindful of the fact that I'm speaking, but not all of these are just solely my ideas. I don't exist independently of everything else. And a disclaimer is that I'm qualified, I believe, to talk about the aspect that I'm going to be discussing, but when it comes to the topic of self-care, there are so many, it's such a huge umbrella of things. I think I'm qualified to talk about maybe 20 to 30% of them. I'm going to be discussing therapy and what therapy can do, but literally just what therapy is. But because I would say that I'm not qualified to talk about a large 70 to 80% of these things, because I am a person who is in a journey of love with myself and learning to love myself. But for a very long time and still currently, when people ask you, well, how do you do self-love? People say, you learn to love yourself. And learning to love yourself was seen as the means to being better or getting better or feeling better about yourself. You learn to love yourself. And I was the person to say, okay, but how? I want steps 1 to 10. I want you to tell me exactly these 3 concrete steps that I have to follow to love myself. Because for me, loving myself is how I get better. It's not the end of the conversation, it's the process. So I'm learning to love myself, so I can't possibly address all of the things that people can who have learned to love themselves already or who are further along in the process than I am. So if I don't have the answer to a question at some point, or I left not to answer a question, it's simply because I don't know, and that's okay. But what I am qualified to talk about is therapy. And what I'm going to be discussing is not why people don't talk about it. It's not going to be a large thing of why you should go to therapy, because I think that's very, very weighted. It's simply just going to be hey, here's some information on this thing, because I've realized through a lot of conversations that I've had very recently and throughout the past that people don't talk about therapy. And people don't talk about it for personal reasons. It's a very private thing for a lot of folks. But because we don't talk about therapy, but therapy is positioned as this thing that everybody should do when they have issues. You should go get help. You should go talk to somebody. You should go see somebody. They'll help you. But nobody actually tells you how they're going to help you or what that actually involves. And I think that sets a lot of people up to fail. I was having a conversation with my sister, I think a couple of months ago, and my sister is going on 15. She's given her consent for me to share this story with y'all. And the option of therapy had been given to her as something that she could enter in if she wanted to, and she said, well, I don't know why I would do this. I hate talking. My sister is antisocial to the max, but she's also just why would I pay somebody to listen to my problems? My sister's not paying. It'd be my mother that would be paying, but still, she was just I don't understand the concept of this. I don't want to pay somebody to just listen to me rant. And I said, okay, that completely 100% makes sense. I get how you're confused about why you should even bother considering this. But I was do you know that that's not actually what therapy is? And she said, no. And I gave her the general 15-year-old explanation, and I was just well, what they do is they assess your brain, they look at how you're thinking, and they help you adjust to be better in the ways that you decide you want to be better. It's a lot of science, psychology, and stuff like that, stuff that people go to school for a really long time. Some people do, some people don't, some people just have life experience. but at the end of that, she was able to understand a little bit better as to what therapy was. So the general gist of that is all to say that I think informed consent when it comes to entering processes around therapy is really important. So I'm just going to give everyone a general how-to or like therapy 101. Yeah. So what does therapy actually do? Therapy is a process that, for these purposes, I'll be speaking of individual therapy. There's like group therapy, there's family therapy, there's all of that. I'm not qualified to talk about all of those. I'm talking about individual therapy. It's a process that you would enter in with a counselor, in which they would assess where you're at, assess what your brain's doing, ask you about what your goals are for that particular thing, and then they would go on giving you resources, programming, different ways of coping strategies and ways that you could like help with your mental health, help with where you want to go, if you want to improve like communication skills and stuff like that. Those are all options for you. And that's just like, that's what you would do in a triage or an assessment. And they learn to work with you in different ways. So therapy, there's like this thing called talk therapy, which is what most people just consider therapy. There's a whole bunch of like different branches after that. So you have something called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is generally what the most mainstream of them all. And it's when people assess with you what your brain is doing, and they learn and teach you throughout how to reroute your brain. So if you are living through trauma or have lived through trauma, and you're just like, when this thing happens, I don't know what to do, or I do this thing automatically. What they do is they work with you to help reroute those things in your brain, because through practice and through your brain literally growing, becoming bigger, you growing and becoming bigger, your brain molds and learns, and you learn how to do things in ways that you're not always conscious of. And so what they do in cognitive behavioral therapy is help you rewire your brain a bit into learning to deal with things in different ways, or at least being able to pause and say, okay, well, this is where I am, this is where I would like to go, and this is where I think I'm going. So that's that one. There's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. People like to use a lot of adjectives in like counseling and world life, all of that, but the words are important. But eye movement desensitization and reprocessing involves actually just understanding that your eyes are connected to your brain, and because of that, recalling images and moving your eyes in certain ways literally just means that you can process them in different ways, and you can process those images in different ways so that you can become desensitized to whatever you found hard to deal with before. And so that also goes into like a lot of other body stuff that you can deal with. There's a large part of therapy which is like somatic experiencing, which literally just means they're dealing with your body and how your body is affected by your stress, your life, all of that, and they learn to help. So say literally putting your hand on your stomach here and here will help you calm down if you're stressed. It will help you become more grounded, stuff like that. So in case you're not interested in like talking or talking a lot, that's also an option for you. And then that there's interpersonal therapy, which is literally just like, hey, I have a relationship with somebody, or a relationship with my friends. I want to learn how to deal with like conflict. I want to learn how to deal with relationships and learn how to do them literally, because some people don't have that experience. And there are more types. There are music therapy, there's grief therapy, there's sex therapy. All of those options are available. So when we're talking about therapy, there's a whole bunch of different aspects, and they don't always involve actually just sitting down like they do in the movies and just discussing with other people, because for a lot of people, that's not something they're ready or they want to do, and that's very, very fair. But understanding essentially that therapy looks different for everybody, and your therapy may look different from other people's. And so after describing formal therapy, there's a lot of informal therapy, and this is where it gets kind of interesting. In regards to like what we do with our friends and what we do with people around us, or what your aunties do at their kitchen table, is also therapy. And it's important if we're going to be discussing therapy with like other folks from different contexts and also different just generational age ranges. When you tell people to go to therapy, that might not be in their context, but if you say, oh, well, you talk with auntie so-and-so and so-and-so at Thanksgiving, that may be more understandable to them, and that's just as valid as any other type of therapy. And it's important to understand that people's therapies look different, and Black people specifically within our communities have been performing interpersonal therapy with each other for generations, because for a lot of folks, sitting with one counselor for an hour every week is not practical for them, but also this person may not be able to address their life issues. If we're talking about Black folks, so much of our trauma and so much of our racial trauma is literally unaddressable by so many counselors, and it's very difficult for people to be like, well, let me put aside, say, 10, 20, 30 hours or however many hours to find a counselor who I can kind of relate to, who I think won't completely dismiss me, who I can then pay some money to go see when my sister's at the dinner table every night, and this is how I know that I get my therapy. And that's also something that we can do, but also in regards to like intergenerational trauma, so trauma that is spanned throughout generations, so your parents pass down to you, you pass down to your kids, stuff like that. You're dealing with trauma that's not only passed to you socially and like externally, but literally for Black folks, a lot of racial trauma has literally been encoded in our DNA. It's really cool and really creepy at the same time. You can look it up, or you can ask me and I'll totally send you the article. But a lot of trauma that we have that people are just now being like, oh, this is facts. We've known for years and years, but people are just now learning how to address it. So people's therapy will look different. They're all very, very, very valid, and it's important to be able to respect that and understanding that therapy means that there are many ways to reach one goal, and the goal is whatever you set, hopefully in some way to be better to yourself or to be better to others or to be better with yourself. But therapy can be so much more than just what people make it look like in the movies, because that doesn't work for everybody. All right, and yeah, now to get to real life factors. So a lot of people will say, oh, is this right for me? Is therapy right for me? I'm not going to be the one to tell you that therapy is or is not right for you. Personally, I think that there are many different types of therapy. I think that if you're interested in therapy, you can most likely make it work for you, with some like caveats that I'm going to mention later. But I think the most important thing is saying, can you be present in your brain? Because to be able to work on your brain, you have to be present in your brain. And for folks who are not like accustomed to hearing the term present in your brain, it literally means that for a lot of people dealing with trauma, you dissociate out of your brain a lot, so you're not present. You're not here and you're not acting completely, you're acting automatically. And so being present in your brain is something that you have to learn to assess. But even if you're not present in your brain, there's counseling for that too, if you're interested in it. And yeah, so that's that one. Counseling as a thing is expensive and inaccessible. I'm not going to be the person to tell you that it's not either. Counseling is really fucking expensive. It can be anywhere from like $150 to $225 if you're like out here paying for people to like come assess your brain. And it's inaccessible because for a lot of Black folks, hey, I don't want to go to therapy and get 5 to 10 sessions into therapy and then have my person be like, hey, you're really articulate, did you know that? And then my whole chest is shattered. I don't want that. So it's important that if you choose to do that, A, check for sliding scales. Sliding scales are things that some people will not advertise, but they do offer. So there are cheaper rates for therapy. There are some free therapies. I can give you resources if you'd like. And also do your research on your counselor. If you are hiring somebody to take care of you and support you and be that person to support you throughout your growth, you have every single right to question them and be like, I want to make sure you're absolutely right for me. And if not, you could actually just go. You are hiring more or less a person. You are hiring somebody, that person works for you. And if they're not working for you, you should definitely not be paying them. You shouldn't even not be paying them. If they're for free, still, that's your client. You are the client is right. And read books. If you're not interested in therapy, which is also totally a cool thing, there's nothing to say that there aren't like 1,000 other ways for you to become better to yourself or be better to yourself or grow within yourself. All About Love by Bell Hooks is a very interesting book. I read it every couple of years. I think I've gone through it 2 or 3 times now. And the book's not perfect, but it does make a lot of great points, especially if you're trying to deal with like childhood stuff, but also just like racial trauma and how race brings about different types of traumas and different types of way that you live life. It's a really cool book. There are a lot of other books. I can also give you resources for those. But just generally as a whole, try not to have or pass on unrealistic expectations, which means that be aware of what you're offering or be aware of what you're recommending. If you're recommending it to yourself, be prepared to ask yourself why. If you're recommending and saying, hey, I think you should definitely go see somebody, you should be prepared for every single person you ask to go back and say, okay, but why do you think that? Because why do you think that? Can you give a reasoning why you think this person should talk to somebody or why this person should get help and what help they would be getting? And be able to give people resources, because at the end of the day, it's just helpful. So yeah, that's me. You can come through and ask me any questions you'd like. If you get too specific, I'll tell you. But generally, I'm pretty open to chatting about it. So yeah, thank you.